Tua Tagovailoa is running away with the quarterback battle. Now, from all the other accounts, it seems like he's leading. Now, I was there today, so I'm about to give you my notes. But I just want you to see the general notes and how people are talking. It says Tua Tagovailoa was perfect 7-7 on passing, 7-7 on passing, 11-on-11 team drills today. Quarterback coach Alex Van Pelt on Tua says the biggest thing you can tell is that he is a veteran. If a defense makes a mistake, he can see that, and then they feel like there might be a quarterback one.
So Atlanta's quarterback competition may already be tilting in one direction because the practice rotation is starting to tell a story before anybody officially says the words QB1. Welcome back to NFL Pulse, because the interesting part is whether what reporters are charting actually matches what the quarterbacks look like when you stand there and watch them yourself.
It's operating like Tua is the quarterback one. He opened up. He was the first in 11-on-11s. He was the first in 7s. Like the practice feels like Tua is QB1. That's the way it felt when I was watching it. So that was interesting. Jack Strand getting some extra time with Stefanski. They did like a 7-on-7 drill. And after he was done, Jack Strand actually got some one-on-one time with Kevin Stefanski, which I thought was interesting. I think Stefanski really likes him. I think Stefanski wants Strand to be.
That is the first thing you have to separate here. Depth chart behavior from actual quarterback performance. Tua Tagovailoa was getting the first work. First in 11-on-11, first in 7-on-7, and according to the eyewitness account, the entire operation felt like Atlanta was treating him as the starter. That matters. Coaches can say a competition is open, but practice sequencing is one of the clearest clues you get before an announcement. And yet there is another detail buried in that same practice. Jack Strand got additional individual attention from Kevin Stefanski after the main work finished. That does not mean Strand is suddenly about to jump everybody. It does mean Atlanta appears interested in developing him beyond simply having another camp arm around. When a head coach sticks around with a young quarterback after a period ends, you notice it. Keep that distinction in mind, because later we have to come back to the biggest question from this entire camp visit. If Tua is operating like quarterback one, why did two other quarterbacks reportedly look more impressive throwing the football?
Was perfect 7-7 on passing, 7-7 on passing, 11-on-11 team drills today. Quarterback coach Alex Van Pelt on Tua says the biggest thing you can tell is that he is a veteran. If a defense makes a mistake, he can see that, and then they feel like there might be a quarterback one announcement coming soon. Good day of 11-on-11 work for Tua, who went 7 of 8 passing, actually. Also went 2 of 3 passing in 7.
Now you can see why the Tua momentum is real. One practice report had him perfect on 7 attempts in team drills, quarterback coach Alex Van Pelt emphasizing the advantage that comes with being a veteran, and another chart had him completing 7 of 8 during 11-on-11 work. That is not nothing. The veteran advantage Van Pelt mentions might actually explain a major part of this battle. Training camp quarterback evaluation is not simply who throws the prettiest ball. Coaches care about recognizing leverage, identifying busted coverage, getting everybody aligned, controlling protections, understanding the install, and avoiding catastrophic mistakes. A quarterback who has played meaningful NFL football is naturally going to have an advantage there over somebody still learning how to survive Sundays. But clean practice statistics can hide things too. 7 of 8 looks fantastic on paper. It does not tell you whether the ball came out immediately, whether the quarterback had to reset repeatedly, whether he passed up an earlier window, whether a completion would have become a sack with a real pass rush, or whether the offense was operating at the tempo the coaches wanted. And that is where the eyewitness evaluation becomes interesting, because the numbers and the visual impression were not perfectly aligned.
But continuing on, Tua is going half speed out there, taking sacks in 4 seconds to throw. When I was out there, I gotta be honest with y'all, I was not impressed with Tua. Like, Tua was, it just felt like, and I know we talk about holding the ball a lot, and maybe I was wrong. Again, I don't play quarterback, but Jack Strand was getting that thing out. It was boom, boom, bow. To Michael Penix, he was attacking over the middle. He was throwing seeds. I like.
There is the disagreement. The stat sheet says efficient. The person standing at practice says the operation looked slow. That does not automatically mean Tua played poorly. 7-on-7 especially can create a strange evaluation environment because there is no real pass rush, and quarterbacks sometimes deliberately work through progressions coaches want emphasized. You also have no access to the play call. A viewer may see an open receiver and wonder why the ball did not come out, while the quarterback could be reading the concept exactly the way the staff instructed him. Still, the contrast matters. Strand was described as getting the football out quickly. Michael Penix Jr. was attacking the middle and throwing with conviction. Tua, by comparison, appeared to spend more time holding, hitching, and moving through the rep. That creates the first real pressure point in Atlanta's quarterback room. If this is truly a competition based primarily on performance, then the staff cannot evaluate only completions. They have to evaluate timing. In the NFL, a receiver being open for half a second is completely different from being open for 2 seconds at camp. The pass rush turns hesitation into negative plays quickly, and if you want the full breakdown as this quarterback race develops, subscribing is the easiest way to catch it because the next clip gets directly into the player who may have complicated this entire competition.
And I couldn't see, I was in a bad spot to see the full 11-on-11s, to be fair, but the 7-on-7s, I was like, what? Like it just wasn't making a lot of sense. And they did like this red zone period where I could see really good, and it just felt like Tua was here. It was like he was sliding kind of late. I don't know. He was hitching, and it was just odd. I don't think he looked the greatest, to be honest with you. Penix looked sharp on 7-on-7, seeing the well and decisive. I thought Michael Penix just looks like the best thrower of the football out there. Like to put the ball wherever he wants to put it. Michael Penix is that guy. That's probably why I'm a fan of him and why I think he should be able to.
Michael Penix Jr. is where this conversation becomes uncomfortable for anyone trying to reduce the competition to one set of practice numbers. The strongest praise from the visit was not that Penix completed the most passes or scored the most touchdowns. It was that he looked decisive and appeared capable of putting the football exactly where he wanted it. For quarterback evaluation, that distinction matters. Ball placement is one of those traits you notice immediately in person because the separation between an ordinary completion and a high-level throw becomes obvious. A pass toward a receiver's frame may go down as complete. A pass placed away from leverage gives that receiver room to turn upfield, protects him from contact, and changes what the offense can do after the catch. Penix attacking over the middle is important for the same reason. Those throws demand confidence. Windows close quickly, linebackers squeeze passing lanes, and safeties drive downhill. If he consistently showed the willingness to rip those throws during camp, coaches will absolutely notice. Now there is an obvious complication. The narrator believed Penix might be dealing with an injury situation, and availability can reshape every quarterback competition regardless of talent. You cannot win a 17-game season from the training room. But purely from this single day of observation, the argument being made is clear. Penix looked like the best pure thrower on the field. That does not make him the automatic starter. It does make the supposed gap between Tua and everybody else far less simple than the practice order suggests.
I just think he can put the ball wherever he wants to. I gotta be honest with you. Kyle Pitts, you better not drop like that. He was dropping everything. There was a beautiful Michael Penix pass, I believe, on a wheel route to Kyle Pitts, and it was just like a. I was like, what? I said, what? Oh my God. And by the way, shout out to UGA legend Cash Jones. You should have caught that pass, buddy. He deep fried a defender, dog, in one-on-ones. He couldn't hold on to it. It was a bad thing.
And this is why quarterback statistics from camp have to be handled carefully. Sometimes the quarterback makes the throw and the receiver erases it. Kyle Pitts dropping a ball from Penix on what was described as a beautiful wheel route throw is exactly the kind of rep that disappears if all you look at later is completions and incompletions. The quarterback can diagnose the coverage, deliver the correct ball, and still get charged with an incompletion because somebody else fails to finish the play. That also raises a separate Atlanta question involving Pitts. This offense has enough intriguing pieces that the quarterback should not have to create everything alone. But those pieces have to cash in opportunities. Pitts has rare size and movement ability for the position. If Atlanta plans to build personnel packages around multiple tight ends, his consistency becomes more important, not less. And that brings us to Kevin Stefanski, because the structure being installed around these quarterbacks may matter almost as much as whichever quarterback eventually starts.
He said something. He says, Kevin Stefanski makes a point to spend individual periods everywhere. Here he is watching Xavier Watts and the safeties go through drills. Stefanski also threw passes to linebackers a few minutes ago. And since I was there, right? And since I was there, I want to comment on this because, not for nothing, I saw Stefanski doing his thing, man, right? I saw him doing his thing. A lot of people pointed out that Todd Monken is a lot more hands-on than Coach Kevin Stefanski.
This part of practice says something about Stefanski's approach that does not show up on a play sheet. He was moving from position group to position group, watching safety drills, throwing passes to linebackers, and staying involved across the operation. The comparison being made was with Todd Monken, whose coaching presence is described as more visibly hands-on. Different style does not automatically mean less involvement. Some coaches are demonstrative, some are teachers from a distance, some interrupt drills constantly. Others spend the period watching details and save corrections for position coaches or meetings. What matters is whether the head coach knows what is happening throughout the roster. Based on this single camp visit, Stefanski was not parked beside the quarterbacks for the entire session. He was circulating. For an Atlanta team trying to establish a new identity, that is significant because there are developmental questions everywhere. Harold Perkins is being evaluated as a hybrid defender. Young secondary players need reps. The receiver operation is drilling alignment. The quarterback room is unsettled. This is not a veteran machine where the head coach can simply manage Sundays. There are structural decisions being made right now, and there was one practice detail that may tell us exactly how obsessive Atlanta is becoming about those details.
All right, Falcons wide receiver drills are doing get set drills. I thought this was interesting. There's been a lot of conversation on the Brown side about wide receivers getting set, offensive line getting set. I do think it's interesting that Kevin Stefanski had a specific drill, or I guess not Stefanski, really the wide receiver coach, had a specific drill for getting lined up. Like they literally, I'm not sure if y'all know, but like D linemen, I've seen them, they can do get offs, right? They weren't necessarily doing get offs. They were getting set. Get set quickly, check with the ref, get set, and then, take off. So
that receiver drill might sound boring compared with quarterback highlights, but this is exactly the type of boring detail that decides NFL games. The receivers were repeatedly practicing how to get aligned, check with the official, and become legally set before the snap. That is deliberate. Offensive coaches do not want explosive plays erased because somebody was lined up incorrectly or never established himself before motion. When an offense is trying to play with tempo or move personnel around, those procedural details become even more important. And think about how that connects to Stefanski's potential personnel packages. If Atlanta is going to show 3 tight ends, shift formations, move pits around, create stacks, and force defenses to declare coverage, everybody has to understand where to line up. Complexity is only an advantage when your own offense can execute it cleanly. That is why NFL Pulse is watching the infrastructure around this quarterback battle instead of only counting touchdown throws. Whoever starts will inherit an offense that appears to be building around formation versatility, physical size, and pre-snap discipline. But you still need players who can turn that structure into explosive plays, and Atlanta has at least one young weapon who jumped off the field immediately.
Man, like I said, I was really dealio there. So let's talk about it. We saw Jahad Dawson. We saw I don't know how to say his name. Zachias. I don't know how to say that boy's name. And then we also saw Zachariah Branch. Zachariah Branch is just explosive in everything he does. Again, there was a quicker practice, and then here's Drake London. It was a quicker practice, so I didn't really get to see a whole lot of Zachariah Branch specifically, but my goodness, he was just explosive. There you go.
Zachariah Branch does not need 20 practice catches to get your attention. Explosion shows up in movement before the football ever arrives. The important qualifier is that this was described as a shorter practice, so there was not enough evidence to declare what his role will be. That would be getting ahead of ourselves. But when a player consistently looks faster and more sudden than the bodies around him, coaches start looking for ways to manufacture touches. That could matter for whichever quarterback wins the job. One of the easiest ways to support an offense is to give the quarterback answers that do not require holding the football forever. Motion touches, quick screens, manufactured space, option concepts, and yards after the catch can all reduce the burden on traditional drop-back passing. Branch also creates a useful contrast with Drake London. London wins with an enormous frame, strength, and catch radius. Branch presents a completely different stress, speed, and acceleration. Put those player types on the field together, and the defense has different problems to solve on the same snap. And then there is the biggest target of them all.
The most important note, I don't know if you could tell, but the 6'4", 6'5" Drake London, he's large. He's quite the large fellow. He's a big dog, and he's every bit of the big dog that he. Okay, so like we said before my pen broke, Drake London, large, he's 6'5", cool.
Seeing Drake London from television and seeing Drake London standing beside NFL defensive backs are apparently two completely different experiences. That size changes offensive geometry. A receiver in the 6'4" to 6'5" range gives the quarterback margin for error outside the numbers. He can win above defenders, box out coverage, and become an answer when the quarterback does not get a perfectly clean picture. For Tua, that matters because timing and anticipation have always been central to his game. For Penix, it can amplify the aggressive ball placement that stood out in this practice. And for a younger developmental player like Strand, a receiver with that type of catch radius can make difficult throws feel less dangerous. But London being physically imposing only solves one part of the passing game. Atlanta still needs the complementary pieces around him to be reliable. If Pitts is inconsistent catching the football and the quarterback holds the ball too long, London's presence cannot fix everything. This is also where the offense's three tight end possibility becomes more than a novelty. Heavy personnel can force defenses into bigger bodies. If Atlanta can then spread those bodies out and isolate London against a favorable matchup, the formation itself creates leverage before the snap, and Stefanski gave us a small answer when asked about exactly that.
But I had my kid with me. I had my lady with me. We was in public. I wasn't trying to get, you know what I'm saying? I wasn't going to say nothing crazy. I did have a Coach Prime, shirt on. I had a Falcons hat and a Coach Prime shirt on. And I said, "What's up, Stefanski? You gonna live in 13 personnel this season?" And he looked at my shirt. And he said, "Oh yeah, we're gonna try to." I said, "All right, coach. All right, coach." And 13 personnel, one running back, 3 tight ends. You got Kyle Pitts, you got Hooper back there. So I wanted to give him a softball. See how he's doing, man. And
now we finally get to one of the most revealing little moments from the entire day. Stefanski was asked directly whether Atlanta planned to live in 13 personnel, meaning 1 running back and 3 tight ends, and his answer was essentially that they were going to try. Obviously, a coach is not revealing his full offensive menu while signing autographs at training camp. Nobody should treat that as a schematic promise, but it lines up with what the roster invites Atlanta to explore. 3 tight end personnel gives an offense options. You can create a legitimate power surface and run the football. You can motion 1 tight end across the formation and change the strength. You can spread those same players out and make the defense decide whether it wants linebackers covering in space or defensive backs dealing with bigger bodies in the run game. With Kyle Pitts involved, the package becomes especially interesting because he does not have to function like a traditional attached tight end every snap. He can align wide or in the slot, which can turn 13 personnel into something that looks much lighter after the huddle breaks. And now we can finally connect that to the quarterback question we have been delaying. Tua may not be leading because he throws the football harder than everybody in the room. He may be leading because Stefanski believes the offense needs a veteran who can organize all this multiplicity. That is the real difference. If Atlanta intends to shift, motion, change personnel surfaces, and force defenses to communicate before the snap, the quarterback has to act as the control tower. Recognizing the defensive adjustment becomes as valuable as simply ripping a 20-yard completion in 7-on-7. So when Van Pelt says the biggest thing you notice with Tua is that he is a veteran who recognizes defensive mistakes, that statement suddenly means much more than it did earlier.
Here are my notes because, look, man, I know people have these things to say and that things to say, but I have a real issue about some of these things, right? Because I was at camp and I saw Stefanski's boys. I saw Stefanski's quarterback room, and I wasn't that impressed. I was impressed by 2 quarterbacks, Michael Penix and Jack Strand. Them boys, Jack Strand is big. He's a big summer gun, big undrafted dude. That might be the future of the Falcons, only because the other quarterback, Michael Penix, who I thought was throwing some of the better balls, Hey, yo, what? Only because he might actually be injured. It's the same reason why I don't believe in Tua. It's not because I think he's that bad of a quarterback. It's mostly because I don't think he can last. I don't think his body should be able to withstand a 17-game NFL season.
And now the central mystery has an answer. The camp observer came away more impressed by Penix and Strand as throwers, yet the practice itself appeared structured around Tua as QB1. Those 2 things are not mutually exclusive because Atlanta may be weighing completely different categories. Penix can look sharper throwing the football, Strand can get the ball out faster, Tua can still be ahead in running the offense. That is why quarterback competitions are so difficult to judge from one public practice. Fans see the result of each rep. Coaches know the assignment inside each rep. They know whether the quarterback changed protection correctly. They know whether the receiver ran the wrong route. They know whether a check down was actually the desired answer. They know whether a 5-yard completion happened because the quarterback passed up a 20-yard concept or because the defense took that concept away. But there is a second part of the Tua equation that cannot be brushed aside, and the narrator identifies it clearly: durability. The concern expressed here was not that Tua lacks NFL talent. It was whether his body can reliably withstand a 17-game season. That is a completely different evaluation from whether he can win training camp. Atlanta can conclude that Tua is its best quarterback in August and still need a serious contingency plan for October, November, and December. That makes the entire room relevant. Penix matters because he may have starter-caliber arm talent. Strand matters because Stefanski appears interested in developing him. Even Cooper Rush matters, as veteran insurance, although the eyewitness impression was that he felt more like the extra veteran presence than the central figure of the battle. So the Falcons are not simply picking one quarterback. They are constructing a survival plan for the season. That is why the Penix injury concern, if it affects his availability, becomes important. It reduces the margin for error behind a quarterback whose durability is already part of the discussion. And it also explains why Stefanski spending extra time with Strand should not be dismissed as random camp footage. If the staff believes Strand has legitimate developmental upside, every extra rep now could become important later.
Cooper Rush, there's Jack Strand. To me, Cooper Rush is kind of like, he's kind of molded. He just feels like a camp body to me. That's like the extra dude there. Cooper Rush again, Michael Penix, quarterback's doing the thing. And then this was a really cool drill too. This was like a screen / stack drill, right? So the wide receivers will get into this triple set, and they'll either run a screen or, they'll run like a real drill. So for the defenders to kind of diagnose that, being physical at the point of attack, right? I thought that was a really cool drill. It's cool for me as a guy. I didn't play in the league. I didn't play in college either, to see things like, oh, I've done this, and like I've done a version of this in high school. So it's like cool to see, like, all right, boom, I see kind of where the evolution there. I see where the
This drill gives us another clue about the identity Atlanta appears to be developing beyond the quarterbacks. The receivers were working through a screen and stack concept, while defenders had to diagnose it and become physical at the point of attack. That type of work is about much more than installing one screen play. It teaches recognition, leverage, blocking angles, and how defenders react to condensed formations. For the offense, stacks and bunches can be useful tools for creating free releases. That matters against aggressive man coverage, particularly when you have receivers with very different skill sets. Put Branch in motion near a stack, and defenses have to respect his speed. Put London there, and suddenly a smaller corner may have to fight through traffic before dealing with a much bigger receiver. Add Pitts to the structure, and the defense has to identify whether it is seeing a receiver, a tight end, or a blocker on any given snap. This is where subscribing can be useful if you want to follow the Falcons through the season, because these little camp concepts become far more interesting once we can compare them with what Stefanski actually calls on Sundays. And there is another side to this drill. Atlanta's defense gets to practice diagnosing the same deception. That is valuable for a unit featuring versatile players like Harold Perkins, because hybrid defenders are only useful if they can process what the offense is doing quickly enough to take advantage of their athleticism.
Step here. So first things first, a player that I'm largely excited about is Mr. Perkins, Harold Perkins. Got to see him in person. Looks scary, looks big, looks fast, right? This guy's a tweener, right? He's a guy that's, supposed to play off-ball linebacker, could play a little bit of edge as well. He played some edge and off-ball linebacker at LSU, even played a little safety too. So he's a very tweener body. He's got a really good instinct to rush the passer. Really good instinct in general just to make things happen.
Perkins might be one of the most fascinating pieces on this roster precisely because nobody wants to put him in one box. The description from practice is exactly what you want to hear about a hybrid defender. Big, fast, instinctive, and capable of affecting the quarterback. He has experience playing off the ball, rushing from the edge, and even taking snaps deeper in the defense. The danger with a so-called tweener is always the same. Sometimes versatility means a player can genuinely solve multiple problems. Other times it means he never becomes elite at one job because the staff keeps moving him around. Atlanta has to make sure Perkins lands in the first category. If his best trait is rushing the passer, the defense should create situations that allow that instinct to matter. That does not require lining him up at defensive end every snap. In fact, the uncertainty can become the weapon. Show him inside, mug the A-gap, and bail him into coverage. Align him off the edge and send him. Walk him over a tight end. Use him as the moving piece that forces the offensive line to identify where the fourth or fifth rusher is coming from. The modern NFL punishes static defenses. Quarterbacks are too prepared, and offensive coaches are too good at locating predictable matchups. A defender who can legitimately move between responsibilities gives the coordinator an opportunity to disguise the picture. And if Atlanta has an offense experimenting with multiple formations every day in practice, Perkins and the defense are getting a useful test before the season even begins.
Interesting set of things just because of the other stuff they were dealing with. Avion Terrell, and I'll probably spell his name wrong. Avion Terrell didn't have pads on. What's it called? Now, he is the brother of AJ Terrell. He's been having an outstanding camp. He did not have pads. I needed to look deeper into that injury, but I know he came into camp dealing with the injury, so I just assumed that's what it was. I didn't want to make a big deal about it. He seemed to be in really good spirits. He was taking a lot of mental reps, and he took some time to sign some.
Then you have the less glamorous reality of training camp. Some players are managing physical limitations while everybody else is fighting for reps. Avion Terrell was without pads during this observation after reportedly entering camp dealing with an injury, but the important takeaway from the eyewitness account was that he remained engaged, took mental repetitions, and appeared to be in good spirits. Mental reps get dismissed because there is nothing spectacular to clip for social media, but young defensive backs can still gain something from standing behind a drill and processing splits, leverage, communication, and route combinations. Obviously, it cannot replace live snaps. Cornerback is one of the positions where your feet, eyes, and reaction speed have to be tested against actual receivers. But staying mentally attached to the installation matters when physical participation is limited. It also gives us a reminder not to overreact to one day at camp. A player without pads can appear absent from the competition even though the staff is simply managing him. A quarterback can look slow because the coaches are asking him to work a specific read. A receiver can have a bad drop day and clean it up immediately. Training camp is evidence, not a final verdict. What makes this Falcons practice worth discussing is not one isolated result. It is how many small details appear to point toward the same broader picture. Atlanta wants versatility. Versatility at quarterback through a room with very different profiles. Versatility at tight end through personnel packages. Versatility at receiver through London's size and Branch's explosion. Versatility on defense through Perkins. Even the head coach is moving from station to station rather than treating one position group as his entire universe. The question is whether that versatility becomes clarity once real games begin, because eventually Stefanski has to make choices. You cannot split the meaningful quarterback snaps forever. You cannot build the offense around every personnel package. You cannot ask a young defender to master 5 jobs without deciding which 2 matter most. Camp is where possibilities expand. The regular season is where they have to narrow.
Mindset is, but that was interesting. But all in all, very fun time, man. I would definitely want to come back to this camp. I'm never gonna do that fan thing again because Atlanta is just too Atlanta, and they just didn't check anybody's tickets, and it was a terrible, terrible time. But shout out to the Falcons camp. It was dope. We sat. My butt was kind of wet. Kevin Stefanski, I need to talk to you again. I need to really, we got to get to the bottom of this, man. I want to have a heart to heart with you. I want to see what really happened. You know what I'm saying? What did Jimmy Haslam do it? Because I'm seeing what's going on with Todd Monken. Was it not your fault, Stefanski? We're going to see, man. We're going to see. But y'all let me know how y'all feel down below. If you're a Falcons fan, holla at me. 2 of y'all is QB1. I don't know what to tell y'all. I wish it was Michael Penix. Jack Strander will be there.
And that is probably the fairest place to land after one day standing at Falcons camp. The experience was positive. The roster has players worth being excited about. Stefanski was accessible and engaged. But the quarterback picture still leaves a real argument. The public evidence points toward Tua. He worked first. He produced strong completion numbers. His quarterback coach highlighted veteran recognition. The offense reportedly moved as if he were already at the top of the hierarchy. The visual evaluation created a different ranking. Penix looked like the sharpest pure passer. Strand looked decisive enough to earn extra attention. Tua, despite putting up completions, did not always look as quick processing the football from the observer's viewpoint. That tension is exactly why this competition is interesting. If Stefanski names Tua the starter, it does not necessarily mean Atlanta ignored what Penix or Strand did. It may simply mean the staff values command, recognition, and experience more heavily in an offense expected to use multiple formations and personnel groups. But once the games start, the standard changes immediately. Nobody will care who took the first rep at training camp if the offense is constantly behind schedule. Nobody will care who had the prettiest ball in 7-on-7 if he cannot manage protection against pressure. And nobody will care about veteran recognition if durability becomes the reason the starter cannot remain on the field. So you have to choose right now. If Atlanta had a game this weekend, are you trusting Tua because he appears to have command of Stefanski's offense, or are you handing it to Michael Penix Jr. because the ball reportedly looked better coming out of his hand? Tell me which quarterback should start. Subscribe to NFL Pulse, and we'll see whether camp hierarchy or actual performance wins this battle.